What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we've got Tristan Cole here for the Hyper Chat, the founder or co-founder of Sempo, which is a company, a payment technology startup, which I believe could be a game changer for humanitarian aid. So really excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks, Galileo.
So before we talk about Sempo and the startup you're working on, maybe you could give us a little bit of background of, you're Australian, you moved to the US, like what's your story and what brought you to New York City?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a journey, but coming to the US has always been like something that I've wanted to do. I mean, my background isn't in humanitarian aid or even payments per se, but it's something that I think was a nearly inevitable getting here to this point. I mean, my background is more in e-commerce. I started a number of businesses that did reasonably well during high school. The first one I did was selling iPhone cables. And I was one of the largest suppliers of iPhone cables on eBay.
Wow. So you're like a hustler.
Yeah. But
awesome.
I mean, I was selling hundreds of cables a day, and I would get up like 6 a.m. in the morning, package 100 cables, go to school, and then do the same at night. And it was crazy. And I remember the biggest thing for me was being able to buy a label printer. And I think the opportunity to purchase a label printer and that privilege of having those financial tools to be able to do that, like a lot of people in the world just don't have that. And we take it for granted in developed countries.
And so you were in high school in Australia doing all these businesses. Then how old are you right now?
I'm 20.
Yeah, so you're only 20. So did you even go to college, or how did you decide to I'm not going to go to college, I'm going to start a company?
Yeah, so I finished high school. I promised my parents that I'd graduate. That was the one promise that I was
Solid.
like, I'll do it. And ended up getting into aerospace engineering and business at an Australian university. Went for 2 days and then decided to drop out. I was like, am I going to be where I want to be in 6 years? And I sort of extrapolated that out in my head, and the answer was no.
Where do you want to be in 6 years?
Well, I want to be doing things that are super impactful. And I think 6 years from then, I would have had a degree in aerospace and probably worked one internship, and you'd be at like day one, where today I'm at day one at 20 instead of at 26, with a degree that is I'm 100K in debt.
Walk me through then when you dropped out of university, and then take me like how long ago was that? And then what's the story of how you got to here in New York City working on Sempo?
Yeah, so that was about 3 years ago now. So during high school, one of those businesses ended up doing reasonably well. That was listed for sale. The business itself didn't actually get sold, but it kept making money for a while, and then we decided to shut it down. I mean, when you're building these sites, you sort of inevitably start to become technical. You want to change a colors button, you learn CSS. You want to build a form, you learn HTML and then JavaScript. And then suddenly you're exploring React and Python and all the other languages. And that's sort of how I started to get into software. And, when I finished high school, went to uni, decided to drop out because I didn't think it was the right thing for me. And I ended up getting an internship at a fintech and was lucky enough to meet my co-founder, Nick, who is a lot smarter than I am. He's got a degree in astrophysics and aerospace engineering and is the sort of brains behind the whole machine. But we immediately bonded over the fact that we could bring our technology skills into the humanitarian industry and into sort of emerging markets more broadly.
So you developed technical coding skills in building these e-commerce businesses in high school, and then what was the aha moment of humanitarian aid is the industry that could really benefit from the use of improved payment technology or software?
I mean, so we didn't go into humanitarian aid with the idea that we would build payment technology, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second. It was more, I knew that I wanted to do something that had deep systematic impact in the world, because when you sell things on the internet, sure, it's creating value, but it's not necessarily creating impact. And I'm a big believer that you should be working on things and, investing in things and doing everything you do in your life should be towards the world you want to see.
Totally. And so what is the problem with humanitarian aid? What is the issue with it today, and how can we because I'm sort of setting you up because I imagine there's something that isn't right with the status quo today that you see the opportunity to fix with Sempo.
Yeah, so I mean, we were lucky enough to get some VC funding after, quitting our jobs, and we came into humanitarian aid with the idea that, we could use data to better improve humanitarian responses. Very quickly, though, we moved into cash transfer programming. How do you get money to vulnerable people in the world in a humanitarian crisis? Cash transfers are basically just let's give people money because it cuts out the middleman. It's fast, it's effective, and it's transparent. And, most importantly, it's really empowering for someone who's just lost everything or in a really, shitty situation, to be frank. It gives them dignity to choose what they want compared to something like in-kind aid where you're shipping in resources from one side of the world. It's really slow, it's costly, and it's not transparent at all for donors.
And didn't you have some statistic on Sempo's website about the percentage of goods that get traded for cash or something like that?
Yeah, this is a stat we bring up all the time. It's from UNHCR, and it's 70% of Syrian refugees sold the aid they were given to buy what they actually needed.
Unbelievable. So it seems like the biggest problem isn't this huge inflow of capital from, and we're talking about I guess, whether it's a natural disaster or war, we need to get resources somewhere quickly. And so it seems like once the resources are there, how do we actually make them useful to the consumers in that economy?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the statistic that absolutely blows my mind and sort of makes me a little bit worried about the world is that if we were to give, every dollar we give today in development and humanitarian aid, if we were just to give that in cash instead of things or services, then we would have no more extreme poverty. There would be no more people living on less than $1.25 a day, which I think is the definition.
Wow. Explain that. There's enough capital flowing into the system, but it's just not being distributed correctly.
Yeah, so in order to take everyone out of the world, lift them up from extreme poverty, so it's about 700 million people living on $1.25 a day, we would need around $80 billion. And US development budgets alone are about $140 billion. Humanitarian relief budgets a year are about $30 billion.
Wow. And so let's talk a little bit about the status quo, because this is something you enlightened me about and I was blown away to find out, which is when a crisis happens and these aid organizations go in, they're sending someone on the ground with physical cash, like you were saying, because people need cash, to hand out to people. And then, so is that actually how these systems work? And
yeah, when you want to do cash transfer programming today, you really have two options. One is you operate in countries that have established digital payment networks, which are very few, but there are exceptions to that rule, like M-Pesa in Kenya, which is amazing. It's a mobile money SMS-based transfer system. Or you literally bank transfer, say, $2 million into a local bank account, withdraw that in cash, and hand that to a bunch of subcontractors, with stacks of cash in a backpack, and they'll walk into a village or a community and hand that out, like pen and paper, handing out wads of cash.
Wow.
Which you can obviously see there's a lot of problems with that.
Yeah, that's insane. So that sort of tees up the problem that Sempo is looking at. So I'm curious, what are you doing about it? What is Sempo? What's your product? And I know you actually went to some of these places where aid is being given and did on the ground research to inform your first product. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so you don't stumble upon these ideas and suddenly it just comes out of nowhere. It's an iterative process, and we deeply believe in human-centered design. So actually getting boots on the ground, going to countries and working with communities to develop, software and applications that works for them. So what Sempo is it's a payments platform for NGOs to distribute money to vulnerable people or distribute vouchers. Because the big thing about distributing money is that you need to know who you're giving that money to. So while it would be great to be able to just give people money, like digital bank accounts or wallets, you have to get people to do pass KYC. And in Uganda, for example, 52% of refugees there can't get a mobile money account because they don't have the identity documents to pass KYC.
Wow.
The humanitarian aid organizations, the populations they're targeting, they're generally unbanked. And there's lots of reasons why people are unbanked, but the three biggest are a lack of trust in existing financial institutions, a lack of identity, and the lack of literacy. I mean, financial products today aren't built for them. That you have to be online to be able to use a bank.
Yeah, and what I also see as a huge problem is, like, is there reliable internet everywhere? Does everyone have a smartphone? Like, there's just hardware infrastructure needed if we're going to essentially digitize the economy. But on the flip side, it seems like that's a huge opportunity, which is what Sempo is going for, which is by giving these people a bank account, the 1 billion plus people that are unbanked, and bringing them on with Sempo's platform, like, you're connecting them to the world, and by connecting them to the world's financial system, like, I guess Sempo gets its cut. So I'm actually curious, is Sempo a profit entity?
Yeah, we're a for-profit company. I mean,
wow, okay.
we made that decision because we think it's, we can have a bigger impact by being for-profit. It means we can raise, venture capital, we can raise money from investors and scale our impact. As a non-profit, you can't necessarily do that as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that, and actually it's a controversial opinion, but I'm glad you brought it up, which is, like, if you really want to move fast and break things, raising the most money possible and investing it and, like, incentivizing the smartest people in the world to work with equity is really how you move fast and break things. Tesla, for example, in my opinion, is doing more for reversing climate change and good for sustainability of the planet than any organization, charity or not, but they're not a so I think it's interesting you say that, and I'm a huge believer in that. You have to make your own profit to be a sustainable organization.
Exactly. I mean, just giving people money or giving money to a problem, whatever that problem is, let's say it's climate change, isn't sustainable. You have to invest in solutions that can solve the root cause.
Wow. And it's almost so funny that we're talking about Sempo in that regard, because that's the problem you guys are fixing, is that people just throw money at these, in these bad situations without, like, a real solution, a sustainable solution.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we're actively working towards, because right now what we've built is very much just a digital vouchering solution. It works by handing out, like, digital vouchers for people to reimburse those vouchers at partnered vendors. So we've, operated in Lebanon, Iraqi Kurdistan, Greece.
Yeah, so could you give us a tangible example of, like, a small project you guys have done? Or
Yeah, so the program we did in Lebanon, we went into the country. We were working with Lebanon's largest community NGO, Concierge, and we distributed digital vouchers to around 200 Syrian refugees on the border of Syria in Akkar, which is northern Lebanon.
And, like, you went to Syria to do this, right?
We didn't go to Syria, we went to the border.
Oh, but you actually physically went all the way. Yeah, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
To just but yeah, sorry, continue.
So what that involved is the NGO, they know the community really well. So we went into the local, like, Syrian refugee camps, and we just spoke to the community. We didn't even show what we'd built, because we had a product and a transfer modality where you could transfer credits, but we didn't show that at all. We just spoke to people. And then after that first week, we sort of identified that there were a few big problems that existed in the community.
Okay.
For example, a Syrian refugee generally has access to internet at a community center or at their house because they have Wi-Fi. But a lot of them don't have data on their mobile. So when they go to the store, they can't use internet. So you can't build a digital wallet that requires internet for making transfers. You have to have an online transfer function, which, is what we built. It's a hosted wallet. It works very similar to, a Google Authenticator code. It syncs once when you first sign up, and then the vendor scans your code, and because vendors generally have internet, they then post that to our server.
Wow. So just to refresh, the person who got this voucher on their mobile phone, let's say, but they're not going to have data, so they're not going to be able to access it. But when they go to the store, that vendor has internet data, and that is therefore still connecting into your system, saying that person's voucher got reduced by this much. So only one party needs internet.
Yeah, so only one party needs internet, but there's still control over, like, how much money you're sending, because you actually, as a refugee, will type in, say, $10, and then the voucher is only redeemable for $10.
Wow. And what's unbelievable... Sorry.
And I mean, when we launched, we actually went to Lebanon without an Android app for refugees. We went with tap to pay cards, very similar to MasterCard.
Oh,
And
wow. So they didn't even need a phone.
no, so you didn't even need a phone. And we've actually built those now that they work completely offline. And with a pilot we're doing in the Pacific with an Australian NGO, we're doing it in remote communities in Vanuatu with cards that work completely offline. But it doesn't work everywhere. You know, some populations have access to mobile phones, some have access to only Nokias, which are SMS, so you can do transfers via SMS on our system, and some have access to nothing at all, so you have to give them basically a MasterCard or something similar.
What this results in is, I guess your customer, the person you're bringing a lot of value to in this situation, would be the NGO. You know, I don't know if it's like Red Cross or Oxfam or some of these international groups, but the difference seems like night and day, which you're giving them of, okay, we got 3 million, let's just start handing it out in cash and hope that it does well, versus here's 3 million in vouchers. We can literally track every single purchase.
Yeah,
what people
exactly.
paid, which vendors got paid, and we can, before you didn't even know how much of the money actually went to aid and food and stuff that mattered. But now you can actually track that and see and improve. And like, it seems like this unlocks so much for what we can do with NGOs and aid. So
without a doubt. And like what we've built today is sort of level one. It's a vouchering solution, which is really important for some humanitarian crises. In some situations, you only want to distribute vouchers because it's most appropriate in the market, or you can only distribute vouchers because people who don't have KYC documents, you actually can't give them money. So vouchers is like the best option in this situation. But what we're really doing when we're working with these humanitarian organizations, we're starting to bootstrap new digital payment networks and proxy financial systems in these countries.
Yeah,
So,
and you're banking the unbanked, essentially, is what you're saying.
yes, but in a roundabout way. I mean, every blockchain startup out there says that, you know, they're solving this 2.2 billion, 1 billion, whatever like number you can pull out, whether it's like World Bank or others, this huge problem of people who
The next
don't
billion.
have people who don't have access to financial services or bank accounts, or are underserved currently. Because when you go to these communities, it's not like they don't have financial services. They have informal, community financial services where you might have a lending pool where everyone, say, puts in $1 a week into, literally gives $1 a week to, say, their community leader who keeps that money safe and secure. And if something, say, happens to someone, then they can insure that loss, whether it's someone's lost a job or maybe someone's getting married and needs a loan to be able to pay for that wedding. So you do have these informal financial services, but they've never had digital products and digital financial services that have worked for them, because Westerners, similar to how you do in-kind aid today, think you can just go into a country and just like say, yes, I know you need this. Here's 10,000 shelters or 10,000 blankets, and suddenly the local blanket maker is out of business because you've just airdropped in 10,000 blankets, right?
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I want to touch on, which is that there's crypto under the hood of this solution, and you don't talk about Sempo as a crypto company, and it's not something that's advertised, which, after this whole ICO bubble, it was like, oh, you add crypto, you're worth 500 million, and then there was the whole crash and everyone realized there was so many BS projects. But, a lot of, I'm a Bitcoin investor, maker investor, crypto believer in the promise of the technology. And so Sempo is actually leveraging cryptocurrency technology to be able to do all of this, but you're not even, that's just how it works. You don't even say that on your website. So could you talk about, what's the strategy behind that, about the marketing with it, and then how is crypto actually used?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in blockchain technology and, what it offers for the world. I think, when you send an email today, it's fast, it's secure, and it's basically free. But you don't know or care what protocol is keeping that secure on the back end. And I think similar to payments, blockchain technology and the way protocols are kept decentralized and secure, for the majority of people, it doesn't really matter.
The
As long
Syrian
as-
refugee doesn't care that it's crypto that's
no,
running that
no.
car.
To them, it's like, can they feed their family for this week?
Yeah.
That's their problem. And I think that, I'm personally a believer that the next billion blockchain users and wallets will come from emerging markets, because it's those markets that need blockchain the most. What blockchain really offers, and cryptocurrency, is a way to do payments that are decentralized, which means that they don't have a trusted intermediary. You don't have to trust a third party.
Mm-hmm.
They're fast and they're secure. So when people always ask, well, why is that better than PayPal? And sure, you're right. In a lot of, the developed world, PayPal is, all right, it works. But you're having to trust that PayPal doesn't get hacked, isn't corrupted, and is going to look after your money. And I think in terms of emerging markets, their governments are a lot more unstable. They potentially don't even exist. And people just don't have trust in these third-party institutions. The question is, with crypto, would you rather trust a human, or would you rather trust math with your money? And
Yeah,
I know where
it's crazy.
I know where my money is on that bet. I think blockchain is doing to payments what the internet did to information. The internet made information free, secure, censorship resistant, instant. I can speak to my family back in Australia on the other side of the world for free, instantly, all those things. Blockchain will do the same thing for payments.
Yeah. Wow. It's
And
a game changer.
in terms of building, blockchain wallets for those markets, right now Sempo is a hosted wallet solution, which means, similar to Coinbase, we keep private keys on a centralized database. They're all encrypted and kept secure. But what we're moving towards is having a self-sovereign, non-custodial wallet, which means that the private keys are actually on the device of the person's wallet or phone. So it means that we literally do not have access to their money in any way, shape, or form. So it means that you are literally in control of your own financial future.
And this is like a nano ledger, similar, like a hardware
Yeah,
wallet
it's very
kind of
similar
thing?
to
But
a
it would
nano
be built
ledger.
into your phone.
It would be built
essentially.
into your phone.
Wow.
Or into a transfer card. And I think the biggest problem with crypto wallets today, and just cryptocurrency in general, is they're built for the top 1% of the world.
When the bottom 10 or 20% is really who needs them.
Really who needs it today. When you look at a wallet like, let's say, Coinbase wallet, it's a great wallet. It's easy to use if you are literate and speak English and know what a 12-word mnemonic is, right? And are able to save that and understand what that means. I think that, similar to the way you reset a password on Facebook, social recovery, where you have trusted friends who can help you recover your private key or your password, for this example, will be a killer use case for solving this problem.
Oh, this is a crazy... You told me about this last time we met up, and I could not believe it, which is this theory of I guess Facebook, you're saying, is already implemented to some degree, of if I'm locked out of my account, but 6 of my best friends say that this is me, then I can get back in.
Yeah.
Can you explain this and how it ties into Sempo?
It's what we're looking at doing is, it's social recovery, and it's using secret sharing. So the way that works at a high level is, you say have your private key, you split that into, say, 6 different pieces, or a proxy of what your private key is. And if any 3 of those people come together, for example, out of 6, then they can recover your private key or your password for you. And an example of that is like Shamir's secret sharing. So you can just put in, you say how many people you want to be able to recover. Let's say it's 6. You only need 3 people out of that 6 to recover. I mean, it can be as whatever combination you want.
Gotcha, yeah. And how does that relate to Sempo? What's exciting about leveraging that technology with what you're doing in Syria and that kind of stuff?
Well, so right now we've got a hosted wallet solution, and we're moving towards building a self-sovereign, non-custodial wallet. And
like,
key
that's so many
management.
big words, but I'm like, could you dumb it down for me?
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
what does that mean for the refugee or the actual system that is a breakthrough?
That means that they, for the first time in their life, they can control their own like money and their own wealth, right?
Like, instead of getting a card they can just spend, they sort of have an account.
Yeah, they can
Like
start
a mini bank
for example,
account,
they
kind
can
of.
yeah,
Okay.
it's like a mini bank account without being a bank account. They can start saving money where before they couldn't do that. They could start earning interest if they want to. It means that it's their like funds, and in a market where government, when you think of the United States, and 2007 was an exception to this, but generally when you think of the United States, you trust that when you put your money in a bank account, that it'll still be there tomorrow and that you'll be able to get that out. And you trust that because you have trust in the United States government, you have trust in the United States dollar, and you have trust in like the regulation that's around that. In a lot of these markets, they just don't have that. So blockchain enables people to be able to control their own wealth. And, in order for us to be able to be a blockchain startup that is developing emerging market, products, and not tell people that we're a blockchain startup, we're just a better product than what exists today. Social social recovery, or the ability to somehow recover your keys if you lose them, is a really important part of that puzzle.
Yeah, gotcha. And it's so cool because you're in many ways disrupting for that consumer what a bank would be, but Sempo's not a bank. You're just giving them the tools to be a bank themselves,
Exactly.
which is what you're talking about when owning ownership of that private key. So then the fiduciary duty isn't on Sempo, which would be on the U.S. financial institution. It's almost on that individual to take care of their key. And so this is kind of the true democratization of banking and the promise that crypto gives. It's like, instead of, the way I kind of am thinking about it is like, the financial system in the U.S. is great because if I'm a citizen and I pay taxes and I open a bank account, like, I'll get approved. I want to send money, like, I'll get approved so I don't have to worry about it. But there's like this layer of waiting for like this approval of the system for my money to go through, and then it has to run through that system. But if it's on the decentralized way, like, they can't proactively stop it. They have to reactively stop it. I can run whatever I want on the blockchain, and as long as I'm paying the gas fees for the ETH network, like, that's going to run. And maybe you can regulate it if you're the government and say that I can't do that, but it's like retroactive. It's already happening. You can't stop it. And so that's what gets me super excited about, thinking about these countries is like that whole, that layer of bureaucracy, like, they're skipping it. It's that idea of like M-Pesa, like leapfrogging technologies.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, blockchain is, and cryptocurrencies more broadly, that it's a leapfrog technology for these markets. It is without a doubt going to people are going to skip banks. Like, why would you go to the inferior solution?
Totally.
And I think when you give people these, you're not giving them bank accounts, you're giving them the tools, and they have to be really good tools to make sure that people understand, what it means, that we can't reset your password for you, that you have to keep good care of it, and things like social sharing are a really good way to do that. In terms of talking about how we actually, we're built on Ethereum today. That was a choice just because it was the best, it's the most popular blockchain for developers and for, real products today, in market today. And right now, the way that we predominantly operate is using DAI, which is a decentralized stablecoin on the Ethereum blockchain. So DAI is built on top of Ethereum, and it takes Ethereum into its system and uses that as collateral to then issue stable US dollars. So it's soft pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah. This is, and I'm just waiting for you to finish because I'm an investor in Maker. Are you an investor in Maker?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So Maker is the governance token, which is like, I guess, sort of like the company or like group that is running this, the governance token behind DAI, deciding what collateral is backing it. And so DAI, I'm sure we could talk about that forever, is this crazy concept of a decentralized bank, going back to the system where that DAI, which is worth $1, actually has something backing that $1, which in this case is $1 worth of Ethereum. But in the future, Maker wants to vote to have that be a basket of assets. Like,
multi-collateral.
Foreign currencies, gold, copper. It'll be, perhaps more stable than any single nation's currency. And so I'm curious, like, I guess to me it's amazing because you're actually using DAI today in a real world scenario. Like this is one of the few, besides Bitcoin being in a super, esoteric inflation hedge, this is a real world use case of blockchain that's actually the best thing, better than the status quo today. That's kind of mind boggling to me.
I mean, you look at DAI today, the reason it can't keep its peg, so DAI isn't able to currently keep its peg.
Well, yeah, so it's super new. So it's like
to the US dollar,
yeah.
because a lot of people were opening up these CDPs or collateralized debt positions.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you create DAI, a lot of people are opening these up to positions to speculate on the price of ETH, and
not to use it
as a like utility, not to use it for the fact that it is a US dollar or a stable asset on the Ethereum blockchain. And we're one of the few companies, but there are a lot in the space that are working with DAI. I mean, we're very close with the team, and we're using it for a real world use case. We've launched DAI instances in Greece.
So like that's literally what your system runs on. Like every transaction is through using DAI on the ETH blockchain.
Most of them. So in terms of our voucher, we've actually then wrapped. So the DAI smart contract, we then wrap again in another smart contract that enables us to issue vouchers that are backed by DAI.
Gotcha.
But these vouchers can only be redeemed for DAI if you're KYC approved. So it's putting this like KYC process around DAI, which means that we can do it compliantly. I mean, in terms of, you were talking about compliance, I agree with you that blockchain is sort of forcing retroactive compliance, but we're very much, we're taking an approach where we're working, closely with governments and also with, specialized law firms to make sure that what we're doing is okay and within the law and appropriate.
And if you think about it, the government should want you, like you're helping them. You're building a system to help their citizens. So in theory, there's a lot, maybe they can tax it too. I don't know. There's should be a lot of incentives for them to want you to work with them. And, building on this point, we could talk about Maker forever, actually. But so I own a little Maker, so full disclosure. But what has been fascinating in this space is Facebook's push. The rumors for Facebook to launch a stable coin, which is basically they want to launch their own version of DAI, essentially, is what I'm reading at, or is a stable coin backed by a basket of foreign currencies. This is the latest rumor, which is going to start with being released in WhatsApp for remittances in India. And so I wonder, like, what do you think? To me, this is, nobody's talking about this, but it's a game-changing thing for crypto and blockchain that a huge tech giant like Facebook is pushing into this so quickly and could potentially launch their own coin.
I mean, full disclosure, I'm a believer in Facebook. I think Mark Zuckerberg is one of the best CEOs of our generation. I think...
Controversial.
Yeah, definitely controversial. He's gotten a lot of hate, and I think... some of that hate is without a doubt deserved. Facebook, does cause issues in society. But I also think in a lot of the places we operate, Facebook is a public utility. In these places, it is the internet. You don't use Google to search for a local vendor, you use Facebook.
Wow.
And the reason Facebook can't necessarily charge for their product is because a lot of these people in the world literally could never afford to use Facebook. So, whether that's in Africa or the Pacific, I think their average revenue per user is like under $2 per quarter. So, these people just couldn't pay for Facebook, so they're giving it away for free. And in terms of the stable coin that they're building, I mean, overnight, Facebook could become firstly, the biggest blockchain project out there besides maybe Bitcoin, which is, a unique sort of anti-inflation hedge.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll become overnight the biggest blockchain product out there. It'll not only compete with payments companies, but it'll start competing with central banks.
Yeah.
So I was actually...
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is nuts. I was at the IMF for the spring meetings, and I was listening to one of the conferences that they held on digital payments and the future, and the CEO of Circle was there, and it was a really fascinating discussion. There were, the head of the Kenyan Central Bank, European Central Bank, and the IMF. And it's interesting because I don't think they fully, the people working at these central banks, there was so much gray hair, a lot of suits, and I don't think they fully understand like what is coming in terms of this wave of like blockchain technology, and like it is potentially making their role like only the top 10 banks in the central banks in the world will like still exist in 10 years, maybe 20 years is my sort of long-term bet, because it is making their role redundant. I mean, for the first time in history, people can control their own money and don't have to trust I don't have to trust a third party over here to send money to you.
Yeah, and like
because it solves the double spend problem. And in terms of Facebook being able to roll out this technology globally and create like it is a corporation creating a global currency. I mean, if Facebook was a country, they'd be the biggest country.
Yeah, I love that by far.
Right?
And they're like, growing like crazy. Like 2 billion people
yeah.
every day on their apps use their thing. It's mind-boggling. And it's the way I look at it is there's finally competition for the fiat central bank system, which we have all these countries doing. Only the top ones are going to survive. Like you're saying, the top 10. I think it could be less than that. The US dollar, the yen, the yuan, the euro, but who knows how long that'll last, because they're going against, finally we have a competitor, which is crypto, which is decentralized, which is Bitcoin. There's it's math, it's an algorithm.
Exactly.
There's not just the gray hairs in the room deciding how much they should print based on like flawed economic theories. You know?
People assume that just because what is today is going to be like the future. Like, why is fractional
stagnation
reserve
fallacy
banking a thing? It doesn't have to be a thing. We don't have to have a 2008 situation every decade or two.
So what do you think about why is Facebook building a crypto? Because why don't they just issue a stable coin? The thing that's super confusing is this report from the New York Times reporters that they want to get outside capital and hold in a bank account a basket of foreign currencies, raising outside capital as like a fund backing this stablecoin. So that to me was surprising. Like Facebook's got $40 billion on their balance sheet, and they're looking to raise $1 billion for this random fund. Like they could fund it themselves. So why take outside capital? And why do they need to have a crypto component? Why couldn't they just issue Facebook coin and say it's in the bank account? Because they're centralized. So the whole decentralized notion gets taken out. And these are all rumors, so we're speculating. But
we're definitely speculating. I mean, I don't know like what they're doing in detail, so I can't necessarily like comment with accuracy on that. But what they're doing is very similar to, say, the USD Circle coin, the Gemini dollar, all these other fiat-backed stable coins. So they've got, fiat, they've got these yen, US dollars, they've got collateral in a bank account, and they're issuing the equivalent on Ethereum, say, as an ERC20 token. So Facebook seems to be taking that route of having collateral behind it, whether or not it'll be some sort of mechanism where, maybe over time, for example, the ratio of collateral required to keep a stable asset is actually less.
Fractional reserve, we're going back to that?
Well, potentially, right?
Yeah,
but I mean, Bitcoin, for example, has zero collateral behind it. It's because it is a pure cryptocurrency, right? Mm-hmm. What is securing the network? $2 billion of mining technology is securing the network.
And the amount of code, the amount of brand value.
Yeah, and brand value. But it's the hash rate, right? It's those mining pools and individual miners out there, those full nodes that are competing to solve this problem, this mathematical problem every, 10 minutes is the block time for Bitcoin. So that is like a pure cryptocurrency. So I think in terms of, blockchain and cryptocurrency, they're different things, and they're sort of on a spectrum, right? Bitcoin is like on one end of the spectrum, like it is very... The team behind that is they have their like very strong values, believe in it fundamentally, and generally are a little bit fringe. And then you sort of go down the like that sort of spectrum, and you hit things like DAI and Maker, which are they're backed by collateral, but it's Ethereum, so it's still like very decentralized. And then you keep going down, and it's suddenly you're getting into like fiat backed not cryptocurrencies, but like stable assets on the Ethereum blockchain. And why would you do that? Well, the reason Facebook might decide to build either a public blockchain or on the Ethereum network or something is because when you do that, you're creating an open financial system. And that enables developers around the world to basically interact with money like they've never been able to before. When you want to try and, as a developer, set up a payments product today, you have to like manually negotiate with hundreds of different payment processors, PayPal, banks, work through all the regulation to work out, is this thing even possible? When it's built on the Ethereum blockchain or a public blockchain, sure, you still have to do that, but suddenly anyone in the world who can write software can interact with money and build new financial products on top of these public blockchains, whether that's decentralized lending, insurance, all these different financial products that you had to be a big company to be able to work with. For example, Uniswap, right, is on the Ethereum blockchain, is built by one guy, and it has something like $7 million of Ether in it today and is growing like crazy.
Wow.
So, suddenly every developer out there, and like it becomes more of a meritocracy when you move towards open finance.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think through what piece of the blockchain technology is Facebook using that gets them excited about this product. Is it like you're saying, it seems like this ability to have developers build on top of it and it become a platform for, like, I wasn't even thinking that, insurance and all this other crazy stuff. Maybe that's why.
That's my speculation as to why. I think for them, they've tried to issue, it's not like Facebook hasn't tried this before. They've tried to issue currencies and coins before. They had like the Facebook credits that you could use in games, but building a public blockchain, which, it seems to be what they're doing, that has collateral behind it, or, I don't know what their consensus mechanism is or anything like that, but it is a public blockchain, which means external platforms, external developers, external apps can suddenly, interact with the 2 billion people on Facebook and start interacting with their money.
Wow. And so if you were, I'm going to put you on the spot here, if you were one of these companies like Facebook, Amazon, you're Zuckerberg or Bezos, and you're looking at this blockchain technology, what's your move to issue a coin, and what strategy would you take and why? Or like what's the big opportunity for a big tech company to push a coin like this?
I mean, I feel very out of my depth trying to answer this question, but in terms of, there's different approaches. I mean, you see like Jack Dorsey going more like, they'll be the application layer that interacts with the Bitcoin network. You see Square supporting Bitcoin. They're supporting open source development. He's a bull on the Lightning Network, and all these things that are like the sort of purest form of cryptocurrency. Then you see others like Mark Zuckerberg using blockchain technology to issue these, build a public sort of blockchain that is issuing fiat-backed digital currencies. And I think if I was a big tech company today, I think for example, the approach that Jamie Dimon's taking is like completely wrong. Which is like, he thinks Bitcoin is a scam, right?
But they're also exploring blockchain with JP. It's so funny
because
they
have the JPM coin.
The JPM coin, which we should touch on briefly, because that to me is crazy concept of the fiat system getting taken one level removed of, now we're not even having dollars, but we're having JPM coin, which is backed by dollars, which they might be able to leverage as well. And so that's this theory of, central banks want to, or not central banks, but just banks, private banks, or I guess publicly held, but these private companies, or I'm not saying it right, but like JP Morgan and Bank of America could even issue their own coin backed by their trust in their own institution. And they're starting to, or they're working on it, it seems.
I mean, this is sort of what blockchain offers. It's, no longer do we just have to decide, okay, not even decide, it's not a decision for us. It's the central bank that issues money, and we just have to accept that.
And now we have a choice.
Now we have a choice. You as an entrepreneur or CEO, you can decide, yes, we're going to build our own public blockchain, or maybe we're going to build a token on top of it for different reasons. I mean, you saw the ICO craze in 2017. Whether or not any of those are successful, who knows? I think tokens are potentially overrated, and the technology itself is more interesting.
Got it. So switching gears, if we don't mind, to finish that thought, is on Tesla. I want to talk to you about Tesla because you're a Tesla investor, right?
Yeah, it's my largest shareholding.
So so what, why are you investing in Tesla? What do you see as the potential for the company?
I mean, as I touched on at the start of this podcast, I'm a believer that, you should be doing things that make the world not necessarily a better place, but make the future that you want to see. For me, at least personally, I want to see a better future and a better world. Not everyone does, or not everyone has the guts to, back the things that they're doing. In terms of Tesla specifically, I mean, climate change is a massive problem. Like, we can talk about all the data that's behind that. If you're a climate change skeptic today, you're probably crazy. The reality is that humans are warming up the planet. The impact that has, we're not 100% sure yet, but it's definitely going to be large. We just don't know how large that's going to be, and it's going to be bad. And I think, I'm a Tesla shareholder because it is, as you said, one of the most influential companies in the, renewable energy space. It is going to be the company that can really help change that dial, right? It can really help make the world be a more sustainable place. I mean, Tesla, I wasn't first a Tesla holder. I was first a SolarCity holder. I bought it when it was really low because I believed that, a few reasons around, I thought their debt was underpriced and I thought they were underpriced as a stock. And then, it got bought and suddenly I own Tesla stock as well. And, you look at what Tesla is doing, it's building this integrated flywheel nearly of let's have sustainable energy production, sustainable energy use being cars, and then sustainable energy storage so that we can still access the energy use when it's off peak. And they're literally tackling all of it. I mean, Australia, I think, had the world's largest battery installed in South Australia, a few months ago because it was a bet against Mike Cannon-Brookes, which is an Australian tech billionaire, against Elon Musk, being like, can you build this? This is a huge problem. South Australia was literally just going dark because the coal plants weren't able to always keep up with the peak power demands of, coal can't spin up like a lithium ion battery can. It takes hours to get.
And it's super dirty.
Yeah,
so it was taking a long time, and it was super dirty, and that was such a big validation of Tesla's technology on such a big scale, that battery in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, so South Australia actually isn't as dirty as all the other states. It's 70% renewable or something. It's really impressive. But the problem is that because it's renewables, it can be, it's very peaky. If the winds...
Yeah, you need to balance it out.
Yeah, you need to balance it out. So they were importing power from Victoria, but that wasn't always available. So suddenly Tesla technology comes in and, they're literally making so much money now, Tesla, because they're operating... I don't know if they own it, but they're operating this battery and they're providing this grid stability, and they earn money doing that.
Yeah.
So it could actually turn out to be an extremely profitable...
Yeah, and I think it's less Tesla sold it to them. I don't know if they're getting recurring revenue, but the government the ROI from the government seems to be incredibly positive, and that, that's one thing I get excited about with Tesla is they validated that they were sell-starved because of the Model 3. So, that's kind of this dark horse story is that's just as big of an end market. It's already been validated. Is that going to ramp? But I'm curious, to play devil's advocate, what do you have numbers on your Tesla investment, or why do you think it's, where would you how do you think about the valuation?
Yeah,
And
I mean, I do financial models on every single investment I make. I go through the 10Ks and 10Qs and read them carefully, because I think you can believe in these like important missions, but at the end of the day, it has to be a sustainable business. You know, that you've got to have a business model that enables you to be sustainably profitable. In terms of the financials on Tesla, I mean, you see things like Sandy Munro, who is an expert in like ripping down cars to see whether, how they're built and producing these reports, thinks that Tesla can hit a 30% gross margin on the Model 3. And you look back a few months, everyone was saying Tesla's not going to be able to scale the Model 3. What have they done? They've gone and scaled Model 3s, and now they're producing 6,000 per week. And you look at the numbers of, okay, can they hit 30% gross margin on 500,000 Model 3s a year, then suddenly Model Ys, the Tesla Semi, which I think is like crazy exciting. I mean, disrupting trucking. Suddenly, you're not only, if you make a truck that is significantly cheaper than what it is today, you're not only disrupting trucking, you're actually starting to eat into railway.
Yeah, rail.
Rail, right? Because rail's the cheapest way to do shipping and logistics today. But you need to have that infrastructure in place. And it's all this sunk cost in to do it. But if you're starting to say platoon semis...
Yeah, which Elon Musk said is basically like rail, which is so interesting.
Which is, suddenly the total addressable market on that is crazy.
Yeah.
You don't, like, why would you invest in trains anymore? Like, roads are just so much better.
And speaking of railroads, you told me one of the most favorite analogies I've ever heard about SpaceX, which is that they're building the railroads of the future.
Yeah, I mean...
can you elaborate on that?
Elon Musk seems to be... he is without a doubt the most visionary, person on this planet. He seems to be... He nearly in his head is like, I'm going to try and make Earth sustainable, and if I can't, I've got rockets that can get me off the planet.
Yeah.
But in my eyes, what SpaceX is doing is it is building the railway of the space industry and the future of what humanity is going to be. It is inevitable that we will be a multiplanetary species. I mean, if we I want to live in a future that's exciting, and that's it's got to happen. I mean, it's the next big step. It's Jeff Bezos always says that he believes that all heavy industry will move off planet and Earth will be turned into a sanctuary.
Yeah,
and
so cool.
To me, that is something that I want to see. I want to see all the dirty mining, all of these heavy industry things that is currently done on Earth. Why not do them in space, right? Where there's just limitless space to do things and resources. And in terms of what Elon Musk is doing, SpaceX seems to be the company that will enable entrepreneurs all around the world to access that market. Before 2007, space was sort of this frontier that only governments were allowed to play in. And now suddenly, because the Falcon 9 has made launches literally an order of magnitude cheaper, you see all these microsatellite companies, all these space startups starting, because it's just it's like the embryo. It's just starting to pick up. All these small space companies starting to use this infrastructure which Elon Musk is building. I mean, in a way, that's sort of, it seems to be a line in what Elon Musk does. You look at his first company, it was this map startup.
Zip2.
Zip2, right? That was doing mapping. That's an infrastructure layer thing. Then you look at what PayPal was. Payments infrastructure.
Energy infrastructure.
Transportation
infrastructure.
Transportation, exactly. Both on planet and off planet. It's all these infrastructure level players, and then suddenly you're opening up the market for all these other entrepreneurs to access new things that just don't exist.
And it's like the way that AWS is a platform for entrepreneurship and creativity in its own way. It's that kind of idea that the greatest businesses with the longest lasting value are the businesses that allow other people to build incredible businesses on top of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, kind of jumping ahead and cheating a little bit here, because you told me that if they're the next trillionaire in the world, or the first trillionaire, is going to come from mining. So putting on the spot here, are you willing to talk about if you had one crazy mining startup idea, what would it be and how would you do it?
Yeah, so
you don't have to put it on the record if you don't want to.
No,
I think it's the dopest idea I've ever heard.
This is something that I think about a lot in my spare time. I mean, I read on the internet that the first trillionaire will be, from asteroid mining. And it makes sense because it's sort of like what is the most fundamental thing in like the economy? It's pulling out these base level resources like atoms from the universe and starting to turn them into things that suddenly you build like services on top of, and you just get higher and higher up at the pyramid.
Yeah, the raw materials. That's
but it's
how
the raw
starts.
Yeah, exactly. It's the raw materials. It's where everything starts.
And if you think about it, that's almost like the potential energy of humanity's economic output is like how many raw materials we have. That's the physical limit of our potential as an economy.
Well, there's actually a scale, the Karaskov scale. I mispronounced that, but it's how do you measure a civilization on a universe level? And Earth, as we know it today, is at like 0.738. And what that means is like level 1 is you're using all the available energy that hits your planet. Level 2 is you're using all the available energy in your solar system or in your that your star emits. So for us, that would be the sun. All the available energy that the sun emits every day. And then level 3 is you're using all the available energy in your galaxy. That, in terms of giving comparisons, I mean, we're at like 0.7, but it's a log scale, so we're not as close as people think. Some people think we could get there in 100 years. Who knows? Suddenly, if you get past level 1, you're nearly becoming, you're becoming very hard to wipe out. In terms of level 2, that is like Star Trek, right? Level 2 is like Star
I'm glad
Trek.
You put it into something we could all understand.
And then level 3, where you're using like all the available energy in your galaxy, or have I screwed that up? No, level 2 is Star Wars, right? Because they're like, they're able to like destroy planets, for example, like crazy power. I mean, maybe they're on this, and they're probably Star Trek and Star Wars are probably the same thing. I haven't really thought about it that much. But in terms of the crazy idea that, like, I think no one is thinking about the right way is, asteroid mining, coming back to that. In order to solve that problem, you're going to need to first solve that on planet, on Earth, right? That is so much easier. And what that involves is having an automated process where there's very little human interaction when you're pulling resources out of the ground. You see companies like Planetary Resources starting these asteroid mining companies, and they're doing it by first, let's send a rover to the moon. No.
First should be automate Earth extraction.
Yes, exactly. Let's first automate, make it like as closed loop as possible, because mining requires all these external things. Like you need crazy amount of water usually to do mining, depending on whether it's open pit or in the ground. Like the I've forgotten the word for it, the terminology, but it's like in tunnels. Like it's already very complex, and we've taken pickaxes and just put bigger pickaxes in the form of machinery. So in terms of like automating that, and then you can do it off planet. And what Elon Musk is building is the ability for some entrepreneur out there, we don't know who, to build these companies that will be able to take technology that we're developing on planet and like scale it infinitely throughout like our solar system.
Yeah, and the real crux of it is there's a cost curve that's coming down. So there's this cost curve of the cost to extract resources on Earth, which could actually run out when we run out of resources. But the other part that's coming down is the cost to extract these resources in space, which is now probably astronomical. And I think almost in some ways, I'm not even convinced asteroid mining is real, because like you have to land on this flying rock and then somehow extract metals and send it back to, like, that just seems insane to me. But the biggest difficulty of that cost curve, and part of it, is rocket technology,
Yeah.
actually getting to space. And if Elon Musk has made that a magnitude cheaper and continues improving that, then he is single-handedly accelerating the cost curve of making asteroid mining feasible. So I
mean, in terms of asteroid mining,
so that's just one example of like when we talk about the entrepreneurship that gets unlocked from
Oh, yeah.
SpaceX's platform.
100%.
That this mining, is a perfect example almost.
100%. And like you're starting to, there isn't, like, we don't necessarily need to bring these resources back to Earth, right? Like we can start to.
I guess all the heavy industry is going to be in space already.
It's going to be in space, right? It's going to be off planet. It might be on like a moon, right? It might be somewhere else. Like there's no Earth will start to become a sanctuary, and suddenly, when you think about like humanity, you'll start thinking, Mars, the moon, Europa, all these different places. And I think it'll be fundamentally a very good thing for humanity. I know we have all these problems on Earth. I mean, I'm literally trying to solve one of them, extreme poverty and humanitarian aid. But you have all these problems on Earth, and they'll always be there. There'll always be relative problems on Earth. If suddenly, instead of associating with a country, you associate with the United States, I associate with Australia, being very like nationalistic, we'll start to associate with like humanity as a species. And I think once that starts to happen and the social psyche changes, we'll just see like phenomenal growth. I mean, humanity in a way is like an unstoppable virus.
Totally. And we're on the cusp of, in many ways, the biggest power move humanity and humans have ever made, which is becoming multiplanetary. We're going from one planet to two. The growth trajectory of society goes from maxing out the TAM of one planet to maxing out the universe. That's the click. And my theory is this will actually drive a tremendous bull market in financial markets throughout, like, we're young. I'm 26, you're 20, the next 50 years of our investments. Like, I think we will start to price in the expansion to new planets in space, and that will drive this fundamental new bull market. Like, I think, and like you said, to me, it's really inspiring and exciting because it's a cause for humanity to rally around that's positive about something we're all doing together and achieving and growing. And it seems like that's what the world needs. We're so divided, so fragmented, even in cities. Like, it's just ridiculous when you think about it. And so that's kind of why I'm so pumped about space and what's happening. And like, even if we don't get to Mars for another 10 years, I think the excitement of us becoming multiplanetary will start to hit a lot sooner than that.
Yeah, it makes me so excited to wake up every morning, knowing that is the potential that we have as a species. The reason that I do the work we do with Sempo is because I think like having the privilege and the opportunity to do what I'm doing at such a young age is because I had the financial tools and the stability in my life to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't have those financial tools. So you suddenly give everyone on the planet financial tools, and you have the ability for anyone in the world to be able to start a company, start a space company.
Yeah.
Who knows where we'll go.
There's all these entrepreneurs who aren't getting like a fair shake.
Exactly.
And we're not even letting them try and create all the value they want to create. And so that seems
just
like
because
the problem
they don't have
that
access,
Sempo is tackling.
They don't have access to the internet, or they don't have access to a bank account, or they don't have access to the ability to accept payments, like things like Stripe, right? They're only available in like 26 countries.
Mm-hmm. So on that note, we're sort of wrapping up on time, but like, thank you so much for coming in. Amazing conversation. And I'm a huge believer in Sempo. And I think, not necessarily that it'll be successful because you guys are super small. It's a startup, but like
very early stage.
But I just commend you for working on such a problem that is real, that needs to be solved, that can move the needle. And I think there's not enough credit that you've gotten for like aligning the gooseberries of like a profitable business model that can be VC backed, that can generate wealth to get smart people working for it, but also really moving the needle for a lot of underprivileged people. Like, I think that is an inspiring alignment of incentives that a lot of people should be aiming for if they really want to tackle problems, And so I think through that lens, I love Sempo, what you guys are doing. So I don't know if you want to like tell the hyperchangers anything, what to look out for, or anything like that. Maybe a guess on Tesla. I don't know.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. Podcast has been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed it. In terms of Sempo, like, if you're interested in what we're doing, then definitely like follow us on Twitter. We're pretty active there, and there's a few like big pilots that we've got in the pipeline with some governments and well-known NGOs. So yeah, we'd love to like have you sort of follow along our journey, and there'll probably also be the ability to donate through our system to these people using DAI if that interests you as well.
Awesome. Definitely we'll keep the hyperchangers update on that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tristan.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Peace out.